I'm not typically one to do reaction videos because I feel that reactions are kind of cheap content. When you react to something immediately after it happens, you don't really have enough time to form a nuanced argument. So engaging in that type of content always felt odd to me. For the past generation, however, Nintendo has slowly morphed into what I've disliked the most about the modern AAA industry. From porting over games from older consoles with inflated prices to embracing subscription models and anti-consumer methods of selling games, Nintendo is really no different from the likes of Microsoft and PlayStation anymore. This month's Nintendo Direct, which aired on September 12, 2025 for anyone in the future, highlighted the company at its most nakedly greedy in some time. Now, don't think I've somehow forgotten the past where Nintendo was number one, or even Nintendo's recent history of being incredibly litigious. If we take a look at now ancient history, Nintendo practically established a stranglehold on the industry during the NES era, all because of its own pride. That arrogance gave rise to the PlayStation, which has rarely been toppled in terms of pure market share since its inception in the early 90s. Nintendo could have played nice, but let's focus on the present. During the September 2025 Direct, Nintendo announced a number of belated ports, updates, and accessories that, on paper, sound fine. It's pretty great that you can actually buy Super Mario Galaxy again, and now we're getting Galaxy 2 on Switch. Virtual Boy games are coming to the Nintendo eShop, and that's neat, even if they only really act as a novelty. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is getting a Switch 2 update, and that makes sense, as having some new levels to play a few years after launch is cool. Those are all ideas that, when divorced from monetary value, are fine. It's when you factor in the cost that you start to see the evil lurking beneath the surface. Those Super Mario Galaxy ports? How does $40 each sound? You thought you could just play Virtual Boy games on the console without some peripheral? No. You need to subscribe to the $50 Switch Online tier and grab the accessory with stereoscopic lenses for either $25 or $100. The Mario Wonder DLC doesn't have a price yet, but considering Nintendo also revealed Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC that is available right now for $20, it's reasonable to assume that this upgrade will be too. Speaking of DLC, the upcoming Pokemon Legends ZA was revealed to have a Season Pass available on day one. I know this isn't a new thing in the industry, but Nintendo has typically shied away from doing such things. I think the first instance it did this was before Zelda Breath of the Wild released in 2017, but I do distinctly remember the original Wii U release of Hyrule Warriors having a Season Pass available on day one. The company has been sliding down a precarious slope for a decade now, and this Direct seems to be the point where it has fallen into the abyss. Everything about the Switch 2 generation has been mired in some kind of pricing nonsense. Not only have games gone up to $70, or $80 in Mario Kart World's case, but now we're seeing re-releases of games get jacked up to $40 individually, with the $70 bundle being a quote-unquote savings. Controllers are north of $90 a pair. The console itself is at $450, with a $500 bundle somehow representing a deal. We even have game key cards as some kind of compromise for publishers to get around the increased cost of cartridges, a thing Nintendo insists it has no power to control. I'm fully aware that President Trump's asinine tariffs are partially to blame for some of this, but Nintendo also recently became the 6th most valuable company in Japan with a net worth of over $100 billion. You're telling me that little old Nintendo can't afford to eat the cost of cartridge manufacturing to ensure third-party developers can release physical games on its platform? I will grant Ubisoft the claim that access speeds from the Switch 2 carts are pretty poor, but then for some reason Nintendo does not allow for installation from cartridges to get around that. It purposely developed a pseudo cartridge to put in a box that accesses a digital copy to take ownership away from customers rather than give players and publishers more options for releasing titles and playing games. Really, I can't get the thought out of my head that this is just unabashed greed. We put aside the absurd price for playing Virtual Boy games on the console. Why is the company not uploading the entire library at once? The console only ever had 22 games across all regions, so it's not even some massive collection to put up. I know there might be some licensing rights causing problems, as Universal likely doesn't want to bother re-licensing the disastrous Waterworld game, but even if we focus on the 14 games Nintendo is offering, they aren't all going up on the same day. What many consider the pinnacle of the Virtual Boy library, Virtual Boy Wario Land, won't even be available at launch. That is simply because Nintendo doesn't want you to pay for a single year and get everything you could out of the app in a month. When I first sat down to write all of this, I was teetering on the edge of anger over these issues. I had to take a step back to realize that video games are not the most important thing in this world, even if this YouTube channel is dedicated solely to my thoughts and feelings on the medium. As a man approaching 40, I've been engaged with this medium for what feels like the entirety of my existence on this planet. I have other interests outside this hobby, but I've begun starting to realize that the medium I love is not above exploiting people for everything they have. When I entered the games media space, it was first a way for me to express my opinions on games and get people to see things from different perspectives. Over the years, that evolved into an interest in the creative process behind games, the cultural impact they have on different demographics, and the developers that have tirelessly worked to give us things to engage with on a deeper level. I became something of a workers' rights activist because of all the horror stories I was reading and reporting on. Publishers have been exploiting developers since the inception of this industry, but it had evolved to such a ludicrous degree during the 7th console generation. With modern games journalism being able to actually engage in legitimate journalism now, we were finally able to hear these stories, and it painted a picture of a fractured and decaying industry. Maybe this Nintendo Direct was just the final tipping point for me personally. I've always looked to Nintendo as something of a savior from the ills of this industry. Even when the company was suing emulator developers, underpaying its contract workers, failing to credit the original designers and remasters, or pushing what it called Mario Time as an excuse to not pay overtime wages. Maybe my indifference to that is what allowed Nintendo's greed to explode onto the scene now. I don't think this video will actually change what happens with Nintendo or its current business practices, but I couldn't keep these emotions bottled up anymore. I expect better from the company, and everyone else should too. We aren't likely to see a course reversal in the near future. I wouldn't even expect the Switch 2 to become cheaper once President Trump is out of office in 4 years, and his successor obliterates all of his policies to help fix the global economy. I do have some faith that people will finally pull the wool from over their eyes and realize that Nintendo is not our friend. The company is returning to the arrogancy it once had, and that should be called out. Voting with your wallet doesn't seem to really work anymore, but voicing discontent gets results. At any rate, I can't continue to lie to myself about what Nintendo is anymore. We're in the greed era for the big N, and that's sad. I'm over letting it control me, though.